Well, it's interesting because the before Babola had the RDC, it had the RA machine, which is more like that Flex 4 that I was telling you about. The Flex 4 being the predecessor of today's Flex Infinity. The Flex 4 had been invented by a gentleman who I think he had worked for Head, and then after he retired, he designed that. Then he sold the rights to that to the fellow Rod Groom, who's behind Flex Infinity, and Rod took the Flex 4 and added basically more potential measurements instead of just the one kind of deflection point.
Hmm.
And yeah, so similarly, two fellows, Ulrich Wiedmann and Hans Weber in Zurich, designed the what became the Babola RA. They designed that. They ultimately sold the rights to that to Babola,
Oh,
and
okay.
so Babola had a predecessor machine to the RDC that was just mechanical, a metal machine. And
What year would you say that would have been about?
let's see, I just okay. I'll pull up the. Okay, so they got the patent in, it looks like 1981
Okay. Yeah,
or
because that would have been about the time when those electronic machines, because Babolat went through an iteration of machines when I don't know if you ever have seen a Star 2. I used to
I
have one
have.
of those. I used to
Yeah.
have one of those, and it had a big old heavy like
Mhm,
table that
mhm.
had like a drawer in it,
Yeah.
and the Star 2 basically had the computerized mechanism.
If they have the four, instead of those support kind of arms, they had little pieces that kind of, instead of
Yeah,
pushing, they kind of,
they moved. They
yeah.
moved. Yeah. And so I think you had to adjust at 6 different locations. I guess that must have been probably about around the time that what you're referencing as far
Mhm.
as the early or
The
the
RA.
yeah, the RA,
Yeah.
because then the Star 3 was the first one that under the new packaging, when
Mhm.
they had the white and the yellow
Yes.
stripes, and then shortly after, because I that's when I had my tennis shop, and we
Mhm.
actually purchased new Star 3.
Yeah.
I really wanted the Star 4, but at that price, I mean, I think I already paid $3,800
Mhm.
for the Star 3 back then. And I think the Star 4 was probably, I think, around 5, something
Okay.
like that. Yeah, pretty expensive. And I mean,
Mhm.
because that was when you're talking early 90s.
Mhm. I don't know about the Star 2, but the Star 3 and Star 4 were made by a French OEM, um, not that far from Lyon, not that far from Besançon, which,
Hmm.
is where actually France's, used to be France's watchmaking industry.
Hmm.
Morel Technique was the name of the OEM. And uh, I don't believe they made anything after that. I think, after that, Babel established Babtech to make their own machines in house. Um, but yeah, the RA eventually led to the RDC, and I guess we basically saw two generations of the RDC: the white and yellow one, and then the blue one that looks um, basically like the sensor in terms of the the color, that bluish color. And let's see if we see another one or any day soon.
Because that was the Star 5 that I think started the new series with the blue, I believe, right?
I think so.
Yeah. And then the sensor, I think, came in under that as well, with
Yeah.
that same color scheme. Yeah. And then they came out with the RDC. And only top end shops would really go for spending that kind of money to
Mhm.
buy an RDC machine,
Oh yeah.
because you already spend 3 or 4 thousand on a machine, and then I believe that RDC center was around 3,000, $3,500 as well.
Maybe the initial one, the white and yellow. I know
Yeah.
that the blue one was the last I had seen pricing for it when it was still on the market. Knew it was over 5,000.
Okay. Oh wow. Yeah, because I had one of the older ones, and
Mhm.
man, it seems like they've just disappeared, or whoever has one is not letting them go, because I have
Mhm.
not seen them come up for sale anywhere.
Yeah, I really haven't either. I wonder how many were ever made in terms of the blue RDC in particular. Um, yeah, it seemed to come off the market fairly quickly. And with the pricing and the sensor itself was quite an expensive machine, in excess of 5,000 for the sensor dual, and the sensor expert would have been even more expensive.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think those who really needed an RDC to check a racket flex, to check string bed stiffness, it wouldn't have been a huge number. And also, you could probably attest more to this, Pat, but calibration of the RDC is different from other diagnostic machines. For a three-in-one, it's simply having a swing weight rod, which comes with the machine. But
Hmm.
for the RDC, from what I understand, Babola only had three different swing weights, kind of, and they would loan those to people who owned RDCs. And so
Yeah.
nobody would always have one handy. They would have to get it from Babola, return it to Babola when they were finished using it. And so that was a bit of an issue, I believe, as well.
And possibly maybe the reason that they maybe have gotten away from that unit
Mhm.
is because manufacturers have stringing teams on tour.
Right.
Those are also the places where the professional players get their new rackets many times. So,
Mhm.
like if you're at a Grand Slam and you have the stringing booth set up, if you're working with head, the head players might pick up their new rackets there. And so usually there'll be somebody there that can do some customizing. And
Mhm.
you're not going to have the RDC machine there. They use other types of machines.
Mhm.
And nowadays, for most of the measurements that you need for customizing, you don't need the RDC machine, because the,
Mhm.
the thing I think that made the RDC machine so large was the string bed reflection part of it.
Yeah.
And nowadays, if you look at Yonex and you look at Head and you look at the ones that Wilson is now going to be marketing, the two machines under the Bayardo label, that create, that look at swing weight and also racket stiffness, are very compact and very small. You can put them in a suitcase or you can put them in your, carry-on, and they're not very large machines and they're not that heavy. And so I think that's really what you're using at a tournament.
The Wilson Bayardo Tune, the base model, from what I could tell in the catalog, it also doesn't look exactly compact though. In terms of height,
Oh,
it
right.
looks
That one
fairly
was,
tall.
yeah, that one was an exception. Yeah.
And the Bayardo Tune Pro, the one that also checks stiffness,
Hmm.
looked pretty long still, and then with the attachment for the stiffness looked quite tall as well. I'm guessing that's detachable, but I guess we don't know. I don't believe it's actually hit the market yet.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think I stand corrected on that, because really the machines that I guess I'm referring to don't have measure string racket stiffness. I think they're
right.
just swing weight machines,
Mhm.
basically. Weight and custom
Exactly.
swing weight machines. Yeah.
Mhm. The other machines kind of on the market today. Well, looking back, you mentioned tournament stringing teams. Looking back when Babola had the on-site stringing service for the French Open,
Yep.
in their later years, if you look closely in some of the videos they posted on YouTube, for example, you would see various machines that they don't make available to the general public.
Hmm.
One was a machine that clearly served to do the same purpose as the Yonex precision scan and that identical head machine that you just set the racket down. It tells you the mass, the balance. Um, so Babala had made something like that themselves, that just for their own use. And you could see that in those YouTube videos of their service at Roland
Mm,
Garros.
right. When I strung at the Miami tournament many years ago, it was called the Lipton at that time,
Yeah.
and Babolat, they were utilizing the Babolat stringing service under the guidance of Jay Schweib, um, and Babolat had a connection with that, so they would distribute all of the string and the equipment to all the Babolat players, because that was pretty extensive, and so many people back then used natural gut. The Star 4 was the machine that was the standard on at tournaments, because it was, you could put it on a table, or you can mount it on the very light poles that they had, but the Star 4 is perfect for stringing out of a hotel room. That's priority one. Used the Star 4 for many years with Roger Federer and so forth. And those machines, rare. I mean, they were, if you maintain them well, they will last a long time. And I remember every once in a while you see one come up for sale, but they're usually pretty well used, because you can check them by the serial number, and you can do a little bit of referencing and kind of find out the history of it, do a little checking. But there are people that can repair them. But anyways, yeah, the Star 4 was definitely the machine on tour for quite some time.
Yeah. And, also Babola, I noticed in one of their videos,
Mm-hmm.
the French Open within the past few years, when they were still the on-site service, they had a swing weight machine, which was kind of built into a transport case, or rather, they built a swing
Yes.
machine and they built a
Uh-huh.
transport case around it.
Yep.
And it looked basically to be the swing weight component of their RDC as a
Mm-hmm.
standalone unit.
Yeah.
Well,
I
clearly,
don't remember if it was Wilson or if it was Roman that had that at the U.S. Open some
well,
years back. I don't remember who actually owned that machine, but I think they
that
both.
was that was
Was it?
another case of, you mentioned Jay Schweid.
Yeah.
When Jay Schweid had Jay's custom stringing,
Right.
essentially commissioned a couple, I think it was engineers, to design and build that machine for him. And if you can actually find the patent application for that, it's interesting to look through. But that
Oh,
was something done under Jay Schweid, and since Roman bought JCS, and
right. Right.
has the
That whole
machine.
thing. Yeah. Right.
And it's interesting because, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you remember that.
Yeah. See,
Interesting.
here's the early days of stringing on Star 4s and
Yeah.
Star. We had a couple Star 3s because I brought my own, or we brought our own machines, and that
Mhm.
was in the Lipton. And the early days of stringing rooms, when you weren't working under a corporate label,
Yeah.
because they're all pretty corporate now, where everything is so clean and organized. And
Branded.
so there's a lot of machines, I think, that can test swing weight. I've seen online where you can kind of do it yourself as well.
Mhm.
You can kind of make your own system for, you just need to understand how it works,
Mhm.
what
The
numbers
timing.
you need, and what measurements, and to get an accurate reading. So there are definitely ways you can do it yourself where you don't have to spend, $3,000-$4,000. But I
Mhm.
think it's a way nowadays where, you know, uh, a large number of stringers can string a racket, but
Correct.
there's only a small amount of stringers who can customize rackets.
Mhm.
So I think if you can customize rackets efficiently, um, then that could create a new market for you as well,
Mhm.
especially a competitive edge these days. And I know there's a lot of online send to have your racket strung.
Mhm.
Many of the online retailers, and there's individuals as well that have websites where you can send your rackets. If you can do customizing, I think that's a good way to go. Now, getting into the market where you're customizing for professional players, that's a whole nother level.
Yes. I think, you mentioned the cost, for example, of a machine for a swing weight and so on. And it depends, of course, what the machine does, if it's swing weight only or more than one. But I think overall most swing weight machines, the cost between them and a three-in-one is not a staggering amount. I mean, the swing weight machines already are not that inexpensive. But then machines such as the precision scan and the head equivalent, I think, are easily double the other
Right.
swing
Well,
machines.
so the Dunlop, I'm just looking that up. So the Dunlop swing weight machine is $1,300, and it's readily available on the market currently. Um, I was trying to see if there was any more information on it here, like as far as exactly what it could do, because it looks like it might only measure swing weight.
That's what it is. It's swing weight only.
That's why it's called a swing weight machine. But
Yes.
so you're paying $1,200 for that. Then, of course, you have the Yonex precision scan
Mhm.
swing weight tuning machine, which is $3,100, and that is also readily available on the market. And that one, I'm not sure if you are more familiar with it than me, but you've got the side weight, the balance, the total weight, swing weight performance, and then you can do a few other measurements. I'm not sure if it goes anywhere beyond that as far as measuring anything else, but the only other one is there's the head. 1 second here. Which one is that? There is the head 3-in-1 swing weight
Yeah.
tuning machine, which is $2,100. So that one's positioned like right in the middle. I mean, the prices could vary a little bit depending on where you live and everything, but that one, looks like it might. You can check the balance, of course, the swing weight. It has a scale on it, and so I don't know. So there's 3 different tuning machines which are readily available. I know you talked about the Flex 4 and a few other machines, but what do you think about those 3? I know we've kind of been talking a little bit about them.
Well, so looking at the Dunlop, I think it's a really good option. I turned my Prince PTC into effectively what the Dunlop is.
Okay, tell me what a Prince PTC is.
The Prince PTC, which is no longer sold, companies such as Gamma and Gozen, for example, had essentially the same machine, just with different cosmetics coming from the same factory in Taiwan. And the PTC is a 3-in-1, so same as the head.
Oh, yeah. I just looked it up. Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Right. It went along with that stringy machine that was also clear. It was
Prince
that
6000.
green clear. Yeah, and it was the same thing. It was the tuning that goes along with that
Yes.
machine. Okay.
And so for my Prince PTC, it's a little awkward using the balance board part of it when it's elevated. So I actually removed the balance board from my PTC, and the scale, same. It's nothing special. So I removed the scale part of my PTC as well. Like a minor operation. I just use a Scout Pro scale by Ohaus, and one of those inexpensive balance boards you can get from many sources.
Yeah, Alpha and Gamma, they have them for I think between $30 and $50. Yeah, you can make your own too, but basically, balance boards are good.
And I think the swing weight only is good. The swing weight only function. You mentioned Dunlop, you mentioned Head, and which was the third, Pat?
Yonex.
Yonex, yes.
That's the higher of the cost wise. That's the more expensive of the 3.
The Dunlop, I think, is a very good choice. Swing weight only, everything you need, nothing you don't. The Head, depending what you want. If you want all 3 together, then it's fine.
And the three things that you're talking about are string weight. Swing weight, of course, and then the balance. And what's the third thing on that machine?
The scale, so weight.
Oh, the weight, yeah. And so really, it is nice to have those 2 things on that, but you can buy a separate scale, like you're saying.
You can buy the Dunlop machine, buy a precision scale and a balance board, and come in well under the 3-in-1.
Yeah.
And the Yonex, a couple of things, I haven't had that much, exposure to it. I had a limited kind of time to see and tinker with it, but I don't think I would go for it, because some people, it was kind of half joking about the kind of sides, the weights. How many people are going to really notice? I mean, high level racket tuners use just a standard scale to check the weight, and no one's looking in terms of, how much of it's on this side of the racket, how much is on that side. It's all about just building the racket to a professional's or a player's preferred specs: weight, balance, swing weights. And
you really have to understand how swing weight, how balance works in order to create your own system. The machines, I think, took a lot of that away as far as to get the entry into customizing with the 3-in-1 machine or the all-inclusive machine. the barrier was a little less to entry because you didn't what all the measurements really are. You could learn it, but if you're going from scratch and you're going to be doing this, you really need to know what it is that you're trying to achieve. If that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, some customizers brag about tuning, twist weights and so on, but even high-level pros, those are the three things that generally they do: weight, balance, and swing weights. And of course, handle molding's a different matter, but there are plenty of high-level pros who don't have custom handle molds. They just play factory handles. So overall, I think the barriers to entry, even to be a pretty good customizer, are a fair bit lower than for getting into stringing, because a good stringing machine is going to cost a few thousand. Whereas for customizing, if you just need the balance board, the scale and a swing weight machine, that adds up to quite a bit less. The only thing is, of course, how much customizing business are you getting in versus how much stringing business would you get.
But I would say that you mentioned that the barrier to entry for stringing, it might be higher because it's going to cost you $2,000. But a lot of good stringers start out with a lot less equipment than that, and they work their way up. So I'm not sure, where I would differ on that, but I still think the barrier to customizing is bigger.
It could be, if you look at differentiation, if you have two racket techs who customize, and one does, the standard three: weight, balance, swing weights, and nothing else, other than, of course, gripping, for example, and the other one does something, a little more involved, which is rare. We're generally talking handle molding. That's something that's so specialized and so few need, that the cost to get into that is quite big. And is it really going to pay off? I don't know. I think it's something that a good stringer can kind of add to his business, kind of to draw people to string from having the rackets just customized, or vice versa. The Yonex machine, I think, other than just certain people's OCDs when they see, oh, this side of the racket weighs this, the other side weighs that. Other than that, I question how much value.
And you can measure that another way, because I think at ESRSA last year, Mark did if I remember correctly, Mark had a session where he talked about measuring the sides of the racket, and so forth, if I remember correctly. But I think you're onto something there when you're talking about the OCD you might have, or the propensity to want to have it in your shop.
Yes.
We could almost say that many of those machines that are available as an add-on to your racket center to your racket stringing machine, such as the Head or the Yonex or the Dunlop machines, are more geared towards retailers. Because really, when you are on tour and you are at different tournaments, the machines that they use to measure they look a little archaic, because they're just, it's kind of just the machine to do the whatever measurement you need. It doesn't have to look pretty.
No.
And they know what they're doing, and so there's just certain measurements that they need to get exact, and so they will actually use whatever, like you're saying, out of a suitcase, the machines that they have and so forth, to measure all that. So so maybe that's something to think about. That if you have a retail store, it looks really nice having that machine next to it. Hey, look at this! Look, we can do all this customizing.
What you just referred to, Mark's presentation about checking the weight by side, that was based on a presentation that an engineer who now works for one of the big brands presented at the ERSA symposium, I think in 2013. He had made a couple diagnostic devices of his own, which he sort of set aside once he went to work for that brand he works for now. But he had a very simple and well thought out, well designed device for that. It involved a couple scales and some apparatus, but it was pretty simple in the big picture. But yeah, the Yonex swing weight, it's got the regular swing weight, which I think is just the conventional, same as the PTC, for example, or the Head 3-in-1 put out. That performance swing weight number, I also question the value because how do you compare apples to apples other than the conventional swing weight value, which is what all the machines have been using for quite some time? There was probably at least 30 years ago that Rossignol swing test, which I think it may have had a proprietary swing weight measure. But I think that's one thing that is fairly important, and it's kind of made easier by the fact that many of these machines come from the same 1 to 2 factories, just with different branding. But once companies start using different number kind of systems, for example, Babola's RA system versus Wilson's SI system, um, it makes things a bit trickier. I think people are used to Babola's RA system. It's been around for so long. I think they're used to Wilson's SI system, at least to a degree.
Right.
Because Wilson's coming out with the Biardo Tune and the Biardo Tune Pro, how pervasive will the SI numbers become instead? I don't know. But as long as the big retailers still have access to the RA machines, maybe that'll just continue.
Yeah, and when you look at the Biardo stringing machine, I don't think it's set up for auxiliary systems like that, to integrate. And maybe in the future they might create a way to integrate that, and then you have a computer screen possibly. Because if you go back to the old babolats that had that, basically you can connect your RDC to a computer, and maybe even to stringing. I'm not sure, but that you would need to, but some kind of an integrated system, and maybe that would be where they're going eventually. I don't know. Or maybe they just needed to have something on the market to stay current, because you look at everybody else that's creating a machine that basically measures the, and it's a way for stringing shops to kind of up their level of performance as well. And so Matthew, I think today we touched on quite a lot of different topics.
We did.
And so I'll be looking forward to having you on again.
Likewise. Thank you, Pat.